Big data. What is it and why should you care? Just by starting to watch this video, you've added new data to your profile in somebody's database. That profile will be used to target you for adverts or political campaigns, or to predict what people like you will do in the future. Whether you get a job interview or go to jail could depend on the data other people have collected about you. So you might want to spend 5 minutes learning a bit more about how it works and what kind of world it's building around us. If you stop watching now, by the way, that will also produce data, probably pushing your profile's impulsivity score up by 0.7 points, meaning that in 5 years' time, some recruiting algorithm will reject you for that job as an astronaut. So stick around while I tell you about big data. Data is nothing new, it's just information in a transferable form. About 30,000 years ago, in a cave in Central Europe, somebody carved 57 notches into a wolf's shin bone in groups of 5, like you'd tally something today. That's data. We don't know what they were counting or why, but we know there were 57 of whatever it was. That's the oldest example I know of digital data. Digital because you could count it on your digits. And it must have been quite a revolution in information technology back in the Ice Age. How big is big data? It's getting bigger so fast that if I gave you a figure, it would be out of date before the end of this video. 10 years ago, Google was processing 20,000 terabytes of data every day. Last year, American retailer Walmart collected 2,500 terabytes of data on its customers every hour. But though size does matter, it's not the whole story. There are 4 other things that make big data special. And I've made them into a backronym for you using DATA for data. D is for dimensions if you want the technical word, or diverse or different if you prefer. By combining data of different types from diverse sources, you can get a multi-dimensional picture. For example, I asked neuroscientist Professor Paul Matthews if he was excited about using all the data from brain scans. But he said, that's just large data. Big data is when I put those brain scans together with the patient's medical records, the postcodes where they've lived, and the weather records for those postcodes. And then I ask a completely new question. For example, what's the relationship between the hours of sunshine they got and the way that their multiple sclerosis has progressed? A is for automatic. The way data is collected by default. Every time we do anything on our computers or with our bank cards or just move around carrying our smartphones. In fact, pretty much anything we do these days generates data which somebody can use. Your smart meter, your car, your Fitbit, we don't even notice it being collected most of the time. And T is for time. Because the data is being collected pretty much in real time, those patterns can be projected forward to help make predictions about the future. Things like when the trains will be busiest, or how much electricity we'll need, or how fast malaria will spread. And the last A is for AI, artificial intelligence, which is not really intelligence like a human is intelligent, but an AI computer program that can find patterns in the data, often using techniques like machine learning, where you don't give it every step of the instructions, you just tell it to sort A from B, cat pictures from dog pictures maybe, or good job applicants from bad job applicants. People are doing lots of exciting things with big data, tracking insects to fight diseases like malaria and Zika, predicting aircraft engine failures before they happen, finding new particles or new antibiotics. When the same techniques are applied to humans, things get more tricky. Should we use big data to predict the chance someone will reoffend and sentence them accordingly? Because that's already happening. Did big data change the results of recent votes by targeting voters with personalised adverts? Certainly, it helped campaigners know which voters to target and what kind of people they were by combining different sources of data to build multidimensional profiles and target them accordingly. That approach started with US President Obama's successful election campaigns. But would it be fair to say Obama only won because of big data? I don't think so. I think he offered something that voters wanted, and big data just helped him reach the voters whose votes were most crucial. Politics is about the content of the messages, not the platform that delivers them. Should we worry about politics being reduced to a marketing campaign? Yes, but that's a much broader problem than the technology. Big data has its limitations, especially when it comes to human beings, but it also has immense potential to improve human lives. Let's just make sure we use it the right way and keep the humans in control.
Yo, we back in this bit for another episode. Go deep, episode 226, because your mother is a beautiful young lady. She is such a beautiful young lady. Alright, let's get into this shit. But what are we going to talk about? Today, as you saw it probably already with the title, we're going to talk about some At&t shit. We're going to talk about Snydercut numbers with At&t and HBO Max and, Warner Media, that big conversation going on today. We're going to delve into it. And it is not going to take us off track of what we've been talking about. It's going to actually keep us on track. Just watch how God works. The show title is Snydercut was a win for At&t and HBO Max. Here's why. Find out why on the next episode of Go Deep after you listen to some music. Yeah, bitch.
I like, we like that. Like, this Alabama shit, you know what I'm talking about? Like, yeah, man, we stepping shit for real, man.
Bring that shit out, hit body, and I got them Glocks and them sticks in the box. COD not riding. And if he a member, he don't gotta pay for the box. Get a Glock on the front for a body. Geeked up like a Nazi, my nigga walk around with a stick, cleaning up pockets flooded with bodies. Pull up in the Chevy, 4 deep in this bitch. I creep in this bitch, spin this block with a shot. VD ride having motion. Slick young nigga can't give away salt, dripping sauce, that's potion. Hold up my wrist, that's ice, that's a roller. Dropped 100K on the block, I'm posted. Tryna go back on loaded. I done ran a few laps around the trap, can't stop. Just pop me a perk, now I'm rolling. Everywhere I go, I'm focused. You play on my top, I'ma blow it. Hold on, cut the grass, bitch, I mow it. I hit from the back, pull a hell later on, I saw it. Told the market when the beat, I floor it. You live by the gun, you gon' die by the sword. I don't go on dates, I know it. I valet the car on par, front door with the blower. She thought I wouldn't leave, well, I had to show up. He got booked for a show and then show up. Come on the beat, had to turn up and I turn my floor up. I'm feeling like Booster, I pour forward.
Alabama shit, just why how we go up. Make them bitches sick, hold down, throw up.
Running through rats on the daily, my trap going crazy. She mad, that hoe missed the glow up.
Nigga, they read every day, get set every day. I just sit in the trap and just roll up.
My partner got caught by the stage, pull up by the jail. I just pray that that nigga don't fold up.
I know we hit mama no stay. In the bushes I lay, turn her shit upside down like a phone cup.
He was whiffing on the ground, rock caught him in person. Now he all nervous like hold up.
But he still got a murk. And then he did it like Tupac, talking about close up. Brain, I just put her op in a bad wood. Rushy cream, y'all. I don't fuck with none of these niggas, but Martin Luther King and Malcolm X. Muhammad Ali ain't friendly. You play with the braids, I ain't handle my business. When I ain't have shit, y'all was standing. I'm talking about y'all wouldn't get JC a penny. When you the right Honda, we pull up in Hemmings. Chad just told me, braids, we family. I got some shit that unfold when you click. Automatic light go when you hit it. Remember me and Jeff thinking the print. He'll stab your ass up like a fish in the kitchen. Different type of gang, control your angst. Stay on the dang, can't be in your feelings. If you out here killing, man, I told my little nigga spin like a silly man. Got the plug, got the socket, yaki, ass out the middle, man. And we don't care nothing about it, how we rock it. Alabama shit.
Bring that shit out, hit body, and I got them Glocks and them sticks in the box. COD not riding. And if he a member, he don't gotta pay for the box. Get a Glock on the front for a body. Geeked up like a Nazi, my nigga walk around with a stick, cleaning up pockets flooded with bodies. Pull up in the Chevy, 4 deep in this bitch. watch I creep in this bitch, spin this block with a shot. VD ride having motion. Slick young nigga can't give away salt, dripping sauce, that's potion. Hold up my wrist, that's ice, that's a rollin'. Dropped 100K on the block, I'm posted. Tryna go back on loaded. I done ran a few laps around the trap, can't stop. Just pop me a perk, now I'm rollin'. Everywhere I go, I'm focused. You play on my top, I'ma blow it.
All right. We're back in this bitch. I hope you like that song. I don't know what song I put in there yet. Lead into what we're talking about on Go Deep today. So, Go Deep 226. We're talking about, was the Snydercut a win for At&t or not? Yes, 100% it was a win. There's no way we can deny that. There's no way, I can say that at the beginning of the fucking show. Yes, it was a complete win. But a lot of the reasons why people, maybe why people not getting why it's a win and why everything is going to come out and we're going to be happy with the endings. We just got to keep the pedal to the metal, keep the gas going, and we'll be all right. Don't get so emotional and don't get so fucking, whatever. Get how you want to get. I ain't going to tell you what to do and how to do it. But check this out. This is why the Snydercut was a win to At&t, HBO Max, Warner Max, whatever. So, now I was an investor in that shit for months in HBO Max because I thought that shit was going to blow up. When the Snydercut was first announced, I thought it was going to blow up HBO Max. I invested like $1,000 in that shit, and it wasn't really gaining. In fact, it was losing money like all year. So I think I dumped the stock when it got to around $700. After I lost maybe about $300, I dumped the stock. But maybe I shouldn't have, because today I'm looking at it and the shit is back up to normal, or back up to what I bought it for, and probably gonna make some advances. Most likely gonna make some advances after this good news of Snydercut, Godzilla vs. King Kong, the Nevers, shit like that. I was listening to my boy Seal Abdul's show today. He had him and Zod Ryder on the show, and they was talking about it. But, to them, I guess shouts out to both of them, Seal and Zod Ryder. But to them, it sounded like, they were addressing some people in the audience. Maybe have thought it was a debate, like whether Snydercut did good or not, whether whatever. But guys, if you don't, maybe if nobody's talking about this, let me be the first. And it, like I said, it's going to continue going in line with all the rest of the podcasts. So the reason why Snydercut is a unbelievable success, ridiculous, tremendous, all these other big words you can think of, success for Warner Brothers, is because data. When you look at data, sorry, I just got a text. That's why I paused for a minute. Data is the answer, because right now, as I've been showing with this movement, the amount of data we're generating that's leading to the amount of money that these companies are making off of just our everyday movements, including Warner Brothers with their Synalytics AI and blah blah blah. The reason Snydercut was a tremendous success to these corporations is because of data, and the movement is what puts this movie over the top from every other movie probably ever. Is this movement that does it. Godzilla vs. King Kong was probably huge. It was probably big, and I'm sure it got the Asian markets excited, and that was good with their, corporate strategies on how to sell, worldwide and shit like that. That was good to get in those markets and put out Godzilla vs. King Kong. But Godzilla vs. King Kong is not generating the amount of data online, promotional and advertising, and any other else kind of data you can think of online like the Snydercut movement is. So the corporations see that more than billion-dollar movies. They've had billion-dollar movies before. They've had Aquaman. They've had these Marvel movies that went over $1 billion. They've had a lot of billion-dollar movies. Fast and Furious, you can name a few. You can name more than a few probably, but they've never had a movie with a movement like ours. That's what puts ours over the top over everything. And for people, like when I be speaking like this, because the shit that we be doing, the amount of tweets we hit, look at everything else. It says trending with 2,000 tweets or some shit like that. We can do 2,000 tweets in like 10 minutes, or it say trending with, you might see some big guy say trending Donald Trump or something with 71,000 tweets. We do 71,000 tweets on an off day. This is what puts us over the top. This is what has every corporation in America eyes right now, is the Snydercut movement. When Warner Brothers just put out their promotional package for for Black Adam, and they put him in Times Square, they did that because we did that, right? That we did that. And it stirred up the data online with us. So AT&T is nothing. AT&T is completely about internet data and internet traffic and internet communication and all this shit. That's what AT&T's claim to fame is. HBO Max was made because of us. HBO Max was made because of the Snydercut. AT&T needed to get in the streaming war, of course, and AT&T knew Warner Brothers had a lot of fucking content to stream, but their claim to fame was the Snydercut. The Snydercut brought all of the traffic to HBO Max. When I had HBO Max stock wasn't doing shit. It never did shit. It only went down. And then the Snydercut came out. Now it's going up. Nevers is probably cool. And they put that Nevers picture. And I've been watching a little bit. And so far, so good. It seems pretty cool. They put the Nevers picture on the investors meeting with the Snydercut and Godzilla vs. King Kong. But that, maybe that's getting a lot of views. And, HBO is known for having great series, so of course it's going to get a lot of views. HBO is known for putting out amazing series, from The Wire, from, I don't have to name them all. They got so many. But, so they're going to do good no matter what because they're known to do it. But also, when you look at these corporations, when they put pictures out like that, not are they just saying, hey, we did good on the first quarter. It's also promotional. Because they trick you with promotion. They put it out, you see it, and now you want to go watch it. Now you're talking about it. Now you're created data, because all of us in this whole movement, we have just mentioned the Nevers today. We've spoken about the Nevers. We've talked about it. That's more promotion for them. Whenever we talk about like we hate WB and this, that, and that, blah, 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 when we say it online, that's promotion for them. We don't understand the amount of money in promotional data that we're generating just by existing online. So when we really, really look at this back end, there's no fight between Warner Brothers and AT&T, because that's just from my opinion. I don't think there's any beef. I think there's just, stage information drops on social media or on the internet to get us riled up to create more data. And I think that's what's going on. I mean, no, they're winning. Marvel's not putting out shit. Nobody really cares about Marvel fucking anymore. Nobody really cares about nothing. Zack Snyder's Justice League has raised the bar so high. Godzilla vs. King Kong might have been good, but the movie was trash. Compared to the Snyder Cut, Godzilla was trash. You know, that movie, it wasn't even comparing the two. You know, but now it's like, what's coming next out of the Snyderverse? We got to restore the Snyderverse, and I think the Snyderverse is gonna be restored just by them seeing these numbers. You know, just by them seeing this data. They need us to continue talking online. Now the movement online is moving like a fucking Ferrari, a well-oiled Ferrari. That shit is rolling, producing millions of fucking tweets attached to a movie that they're gonna watch. So you got the online chatter data, plus you're going to, if we get to watch it in the movie theaters now, you know, because COVID has let up, plus you're gonna have the theatrical run money, plus you're gonna have the streaming run money, plus you're gonna have, you know, digital sales or fucking merchandise sales or hard copy sales or all of that shit. Like, we think we're fucking up a corporation, but really the corporation has just maneuvered us to be the biggest winners in Hollywood in a long fucking time. And they're doing it off of us. We're doing it. Now, it could be cool if they entertain us good enough. We could roll on, you know. We got into this shit because Zack Snyder entertained us good enough, and we wanted to continue that entertaining in them. You know, Zack Snyder also teaches in his movie, you know. We wanted to continue that. So if they continue that level of entertainment and quality of movie, we'll continue the movement. You know, the movement will continue. I think it's going so good for them right now. It's nobody should be mad at anything. We, like, some of the people in our movement, I always see, like, people take any sort of news and they just get down about it. Anytime any of the trades mention the Snyder Cut, it's a bad day for some people in the movement, and they talk shit about it and this, that, or the other. And that's cool, but guys, at this point right now, we're like fucking juggernaut that's running. He can't be stopped. We are a perpetual motion machine. That shit is fucking, it cannot be stopped right now. If we continue this level of energy, because it is all of this energy that we're doing and talking about, and, you know, internet chatter is creating a lot of fucking money. And I know y'all don't believe me, so I will put white people in here. But of course, before we wrap it up, but of course, the Snyder Cut was a tremendous win for HBO, Max, At&t, Warner Brothers, and everybody else involved. It was a tremendous win, and it still is a tremendous win. It's the gift that keeps on giving, because the value of data, which is the most valuable asset commodity on the planet, and we are generating that bitch like a gold mine. Yeah, bitch.
How Netflix is using artificial intelligence and big data to drive business performance. Netflix is a hugely successful business at the moment. They have added a massive amount of subscribers, and they are now at around 150 million across the world. And they have put AI and data at the core of their business strategy. So everything they now do is driven by data and by insights. The first area where they use data is to better understand us as consumers. So they can exactly understand what we're watching, what we're browsing, what we are skipping, if we started to watch a film and then stopped this. So lots of content providers haven't got the same ability. Because they are so big, they have huge volumes of data, and their understanding of us as consumers is becoming more and more granular. So recently they looked at horror movies, for example. So they thought, okay, if you watch 70% of a film and then suddenly you stop watching at the end of this film, this probably indicated this is almost too scary for you to finish. And so they released the top 10 scariest movies that we're too scared to finish. And top of that list was Cabin Fever and Carnage Park as those films that we can't actually finish. So this is giving, all of this data is giving them a hugely granular insight into customers, and they use this data to produce new content because they know what we like, what we dislike. So in the past there was this fear that by looking at what customers like and dislike, you would only have those big blockbuster movies that everyone likes. What Netflix actually understood well is that there are lots of different niches that people like to watch, and if they produce content for those niches, they will have a ready audience for those bits of content. What is interesting is that this is making their content extremely successful. So the success rate of newly produced content in traditional TV is around 30 and 40%. Whereas Netflix is now at 80%, which is leaving their competition behind because they now use their customer understanding to drive content and new productions. The second area where they use AI and big data is to recommend us new movies and new TV programs to watch. What is interesting is that 80% of what we watch on Netflix is now driven by their recommendations. So this is again something completely unprecedented, and Netflix has put a lot of effort into fine-tuning their algorithms that will understand us as consumers and then give us content and recommend content for us that we will actually enjoy. The third area Netflix uses AI and machine learning is to auto-generate thumbnails. They obviously realize that we only spend a limited time trying to find the next film that we want to watch. And what they found is that we only spend a minute and a half looking for films, and in this time we scan between 10 and 20 titles. So they only have a very short amount of time to show us something that we might or might not be interested in. So they show these little thumbnails with the titles, but the thumbnail could be anything, any scene out of the movie. So they need to figure out which scene do I show you. And again, what they're now doing is they're using machine learning to extract the thumbnail that the machines have learned that we will like best. So this whole process is now automated dynamically, and in the future it could even be personalized, where you might see a different thumbnail for the same film compared to your friend because they know what you are responding to. The fourth area Netflix uses AI and big data in is in their streaming optimization. So when you sit at home, your broadband speed varies. And what they don't want to do is don't want to lose quality. So they are now predicting speeds at different times, and this will then automatically be used by their machine learning algorithms to determine what films people might want to watch and whether they want to cache them in a regional server to make it then faster to download to your house or not. So again, they're monitoring the quality and what impact it has, so they can automatically scale down or scale up the quality of a movie that they're streaming to your house. Another really cool area that Netflix is now using AI in is in their pre-production, especially around finding a location to shoot a movie in, for example. So artificial intelligence tool will look at things like the actors, their availability, where they're located, the camera teams, their availability and where they are located. And all of this information is now used to identify the best places. And again, they will look at what sort of scenes are required, and then those AIs can now recommend areas, cities, places where you might want to shoot a movie, which I think is pretty cool. And the final area Netflix uses AI in now is in the post-production. So the editing process, this was done pretty manually in the past. Nowadays, the editing is still done manually, but then the quality checks are driven by AI. So the AI will look at where do we need some human quality control, when in the past have there been mistakes, maybe syncing a subtitle to a certain scene. If this was a problem, AI will flag this up. So again, this has made this whole post-production process a lot more efficient and effective. So those are the areas Netflix is using AI and big data, which I think is pretty fascinating. They're doing very well as a business. If you want to learn more about how other companies use AI and big data, have a look on my channel. I have lots of other videos explaining how companies like Facebook and others are using AI really effectively. Or head to my website at bernardmar.com, where you can find lots of case studies and articles on how other companies use AI, big data, and other technologies.
We all thought AI was going to lead to Skynet and robots that would wipe out the human race, when really it'll lead to endless sequels of Cats and then us doing it to ourselves. Hey guys, thanks so much for clicking on this video. My name is Chris. Today what I want to talk about is this crazy story that came out of the Hollywood Reporter that I can't believe is actually real. The use of AI technology to bring you the future movies of tomorrow. I really want to hear your guys' opinion on what you think of this story, whether you think this is a good thing or a bad thing, and leave a like if you're ready for Ultron to create the next best picture. Okay, so going into specifics on what is happening here, basically Warner Brothers has signed a deal with this company entitled Synalytic, and what this company has managed to do is create an artificial intelligence program that can run the numbers and tell you exactly if a movie is going to be successful or not. Specifically saying, under the new deal, Warner Brothers will leverage the system's comprehensive data and predictive analytics to guide decision making at the greenlight stage. The integrated online platform can assess the value of a star in any territory and how much a film is expected to make in a theater and on other ancillary streams. So what this basically means is next time Warner Bros. Has a script in their hands, which I don't know, could be the Nightmare on Elm Street reboot, and they want Kevin Hart to be Freddy Krueger, they can pop it into the machine, and within seconds, the machine will tell them this is a flop or this will be a success. And based off this new AI system, it'll basically be giving us the movies that we'll be seeing in the coming years. No longer will we have the decision making, the people who take big risk into, I don't know, maybe this movie could work out? Which means we could no longer have great risk-taking movies like Joker. You may have heard of this by now, but Warner Brothers had no faith at all in the Joker movie. It was going to be rated R, it was going to be directed by the guy who did The Hangover, starring Joaquin Phoenix, which is a great actor, but he's never been in a hugely successful box office film. Warner Brothers was so against this project that they didn't even pay the director. Instead, they just offered him a percentage of the earnings the movie would make, thinking it was going to be a flop and they wouldn't have to pay him. And wouldn't you know, that movie was a huge surprise. It's got Oscar buzz and ended up making $1 billion at the box office. A movie like The Joker was bred and built on guts, blood, sweat, and tears. Was a person having complete faith in the material and what they had, and that it would be a success in the theater and make a lot of money. And it turned out to be the case. If Warner Brothers had this system in place, it would have seen a rated R superhero movie out its main hero, who's the main popular draw. It would have rejected this thing and we would have never have gotten a Joker movie. Not to mention, what kind of projects will they actually be greenlighting? Because it'll just be a bunch of projects that are mainstream, that are the common thing being done over and over. Which really sucks, because that just means Hollywood is going to get a lot more unoriginal. We're not going to see these fantastic stories. We're not going to see these out-of-box franchises that might become huge, like A Quiet Place. But what do you know? It's a success and we're getting a sequel this year. The article even goes on to mention that if this system was in place before 2019, movies like The Kitchen, Shaft, and Godzilla King of Monsters probably would not have happened because the analytics behind those movies were not looking strong. So you know, you Godzilla fans out there, which I know there are plenty of you, this system would have gone ahead and put to rest the Godzilla universe, and we might not have gotten Kong vs. Godzilla this year. To me, this is also scary because what other things could this lead to other than just picking a movie based off stars, story, and what's trending in public knowledge? Because studios are already doing this. They have a group of people who are risk analysts who they take a script, they tell them who's going to be in it, and they do it over the course of several days. Which, by the way, this AI system is now firing that guy whose job was to take a risk analysis of future movies coming up. So more robots taking jobs in the future. If this thing just makes nothing but successful films for Warner Brothers, they're going to try to see what else they can tweak with this AI system to get even more money out of the consumer's pockets. Because one thing they do mention right here, coming from one of the members of this AI company, artificial intelligence sounds scary, but right now an AI cannot make any creative decisions. What it is good at is crunching numbers and breaking down huge data sets and showing patterns that would not be visible to humans. Hollywood is all about these formula films, plugging in this X and Y that'll lead them to C, which is a huge cash grab. This really leads me to believe that there's gonna be a future where instead of seeing a human writer, you will see written by HAL 2008 edition. I'm complaining and showing my anti-AI side here, but this is all meant to be good for us. This is all meant to provide us the best quality and keep a business afloat, because no one wants to see Warner Brothers and a lot of people lose their jobs. But it is so strange to me that this is actually a thing. And heck, this system might not last long. It could look at a script and say, oh yeah, that's a winner. You're going to have box office success and that's your new franchise. And then it flops at the box office. They're shutting down that AI system fast. So what do you guys think about this? Do you think this AI computer is the future for making movies? I mean, Warner Bros. Isn't the only one on here. There are other studios who are now clients of this company and are helping them to predict what movies they should make. Really curious to hear what you guys think. Be sure to like and subscribe. Follow me on Twitter at 3C Film Review. As always, I'm Chris. Take care.
Your personal information is gathered and stored everywhere, all the time. Every single thing you do with your cell phone and your computer is registered and analyzed by companies like Google, Facebook, Apple and Twitter, to name but a few. All these personal data forms the heart of something called big data, a treasure trove of valuable new insights deduced from your location settings, emails, photographs, text and everything else you do digitally. This makes all your personal information very valuable. Companies pay good money to find out everything about you, and they use it for a lot more than just targeted advertising. Your personal data can be used to predict the future, and that's where the big money is. Your money. Coming up on this program.
Certainly we're able to find indicators of a person's interest and purchase intent that they may be giving subconsciously.
The Google business plan is the greatest threat to freedom on the internet, greater than the NSA, greater than any censor, because it's directly making money from controlling what people know about.
The key is to regard the data as an asset. It's something that's valuable, it's something that you have, and to think of it a little bit like money.
This is Backlight. Welcome to the future. All your personal information that is stored and kept is worth a lot of money. The things you post on Facebook, the tweets you post, the photographs you take, the text you send. Even when you do nothing, you produce data. And even that data are worth money. Until recently, Matt Hogan was a bond trader with a big bank on Wall Street. He noticed the price of data soaring, including your personal data that you now give away for free.
You know, when I see all these people, you know, creating data left and right, you know, taking a picture, talking on the phone, dialing a number, you know, clicking on an ad. I mean, I see dollar signs for these people, right? I mean, I see the creation of value from this stream of behavior that they're exhibiting. If I asked, you know, this guy over here on the street and I said, you know, what do you do with your data? You know, he'd probably look at me and say, what do you mean? What do I do with my data? It's, you know, your data's on 5 different devices and 50 different platforms that you signed up for. The plain fact is it's being sold right now and we get nothing for it. Other people are lining their pockets because it's this valuable asset, it's a valuable commodity.
For all of human history, basically, businesses were trying to sell products or services. Data was always used to sell physical goods or sell a service, but data itself was never the good itself that was being sold.
Victor Meyer-Schönberger and Kenneth Cukier co-wrote the book Big Data, a revolution that will transform how we live, work and think. In the book, they investigate how the huge amount of data is changing our world.
Now data gains its own value, gains its own importance, and so itself becomes a product to be sold, to be used, to be analyzed, and thereby extract value from it. And that changes, of course, the revenue and business models of many companies.
Your personal information, continuously stored by numerous businesses, has become a commodity. But the going rates are very unclear.
It's interesting that the greatest fortunes in history are being built almost instantly on other people's data, and yet it's very hard to say how much the data is worth.
Jaron Lanier is a big name in Silicon Valley. He initiated various startups and sold them successfully to companies like Google and Oracle. Last year he wrote Who Owns the Future?, in which he wonders if we shouldn't be paid for all these data we produce.
Even though the companies that want your data promote what they call openness, Facebook says, share, share, you have to share. Even though they want that, the truth is that their own operations they keep very secret. So it's very hard to know how much people have paid each other for access to your data. We don't know the total amount. We do know that it's substantial, though. We do know that the market values companies that collect data. So based on just looking at all of that, we can estimate that perhaps for an average person, some hundreds of dollars have been spent for access to their data in a given year. For a lot of people, it's actually in the thousands. But there's probably nobody for whom it's less than the hundreds at this point.
Every business now is looking at data as this potential source of value creation. We're seeing more and more people are beginning to realize that this data has tremendous value. But if you look around here at all these people, you know, people aren't, it's not necessarily the first thing in their mind to think about, oh, my data is valuable or any data is valuable. I mean, think about the world in general. If you're a producer producing some sort of asset or some sort of end product, you typically get paid for that. So it's very strange when you think about the fact that none of us are getting paid for anything that we do right now, but we should be.
The mass acceptance of smartphones and tablets has made gathering and storing your personal data extremely easy and cheap. A lot of data are stored and kept without you noticing.
Even if we control all of our information almost perfectly, people around us can leak information that compromises us. If I don't reveal anything about my sexual orientation, but some of my friends do, then just by the fact that they are my friends and they revealed something about their sexual orientation creates a strong probability about my sexual orientation.
The amount of stored data about you has risen exponentially over the past few years. All these data reveal things about you. A person like Michael Kosinski of Cambridge University can learn a lot about you simply by checking what you liked on Facebook.
I was completely agape when I learned that you can actually predict whether someone's fine with divorce or not simply by looking at what he or she likes on Facebook. Basically, what we did, we extracted people's likes and matched it with information that we had about people's personality, IQ, sexual orientation, race, and a number of other traits. And we built a machine learning model, a computer model that was able to predict one from the other. What was very surprising, and very surprising even for us, was the accuracy of the model. Some traits like sexual orientation, like gender and race, were able to predict with accuracy close to perfect. So Facebook and your internet browsing stream, your behavior that is recorded by your cell phone, it all contains much more data than just Facebook likes. But what we did, we deliberately limited ourselves to likes. Likes is kind of very generic kind of information. Moreover, it's public.
Your information, in some technical sense, depending on what country, your information might be owned by you, but you don't have the power of ownership. You don't have the power to decide not to sell it. You don't have the power to set your own price. You have no power at all. Because the problem is that you have to click through on these agreements, or maybe you're just observed. Now, but then there are third parties who aggregate the information and analyze you. Those parties control your information. Whether they own it technically is a different question, but they control your information.
Right now, it's scattered everywhere. Your bank knows something, the government knows something, your phone company knows something, Google knows something, Facebook knows something, your workplace knows something. So it's hard to say, right? It's certainly gigabytes of data.
This is Alex Pentland. He's a professor of the MIT Media Lab in Boston and one of the world's most famous experts on big data. He knows everything that can be done with our personal information, and he also knows the risks.
So this thing it's on there right now. That's a diagram of my social health, my mental health. And what it does is it measures, without my doing anything, it measures how much socialization I get, how's my activity, do I have a regular focused pattern of work and life? And those are all things that are diagnostic criteria for mental illness. This has three things. It says social, activity, and focus. And so social is easy to understand, right? That's like, do you call up your friends? Do you call them regularly? Phones also know when other people are around because they can look at the Wi-Fi signals and the Bluetooth signals. If you imagine someone who's very depressed, maybe they just stay inside all the time. This was developed for soldiers. So when soldiers are released from the military, they come back home, they often have a hard time integrating back into society. So, if you see one of your buddies is not doing so well, you can give them a call. That's a major way to address things like mental illness. On the other hand, if it was the government doing this, it would be really scary. Okay.
6 months ago, the American whistleblower Edward Snowden first revealed how the NSA has access to personal data stored with internet companies like Google and Facebook. In fact, as it turned out, these companies actively cooperate in sharing your data with the authorities.
I mean, this is just the bizarre thing to me, that people give their personal information to Facebook. They say, oh, I think it's very hip and very cool and very youthful and very freeing to just give all my information to some company in California. And then people are shocked that the National Security Administration, the NSA, has been forcing those companies to give them the data. You're shocked? Really? That surprises you? I mean, don't make the stupid decision in the first place. I mean, this is the thing, that people are open to abuse and then they're surprised that they're abused. I mean, let's, one of the things that simply has to change is people have to stop being so passive.
So George Orwell, envisioned this 1984 where, people were being spied on, but they were being spied on by other people watching cameras and listening to microphones. And so now we have far more detailed measurements about, already, far more detailed measurements about people, and almost all the people in the world also. That's something he could never have foreseen. Right now, there's something on the order of 5 billion phones out there. That means you know every person on Earth practically is all of the time. You know who their friends are because of who they call. You know where they go, what their habits are. As we get to sort of more developed countries where we have credit cards and you know what they buy, and so it's far more information about people than George Orwell ever had. And this is why it's important to think about who owns that data. What can we do with it?
The fact that all these personal data stored by large internet companies like Google and Facebook can be accessed by the authorities has set off the debate about privacy again. But according to Jaron Lanier, the whole privacy issue is a hopeless debate.
Well, privacy is in a way a useless idea, because if you say I want to hold on to my data and keep it private, then you're not participating in the benefits of big data. If you want to say you can use my data but it's anonymized, you're still not participating in the benefits, and besides, anonymization is impossible, so it's stupid. But so privacy doesn't mean anything. In a sense, it's not a useful idea, and it's the idea that's driving government bureaucracies who look at this, except it doesn't make any sense, so they're all wasting their time. You know, and this, I don't know. I don't know what to do with this. I just listen to privacy bureaucrats, and I just can't believe I'm listening to people talk about absolute nonsense, which they can't define and can't do anything about. So what I prefer, instead of privacy, is I prefer to think about commercial rights, because commercial rights are a form of privacy. If you live in a place that's defined commercially, you have a rental agreement or you own the place, and that creates privacy. So it's a way of talking about privacy that's much more concrete, where you can be very specific. You don't have to rely on philosophy. You can actually concretely talk about something. So what I believe is that people should own their data, they should be paid for it, and they should have rights to make decisions about the price of their data.
As yet, you're giving away most of your personal data for free. Businesses are only too keen to store that information because your personal data are extremely useful. First of all, there's advertising. Your data are used to send you targeted ads. But the advertising industry is not what it used to be.
Advertising used to be a form of rhetoric, a form of expression. So an advertisement meant there's a beautiful woman with a beautiful car, and if you buy the car, you'll be around the beautiful woman. It was always bullshit. Everybody knew that, and yet somehow we bought into it. And my personal opinion is that this type of advertising, even though it's ridiculous and annoying in many cases, has been essential to our well-being, because people are habit-bound, and modernity has required people to change habits, and advertising has been the way that we've done that. And I think that's mostly been for the better. So overall, I'm happy with traditional advertising. I'm glad it exists. However, what we're talking about in the internet era is not advertising as we knew it. Instead, what this is about is micromanagement of the options in front of you. And so it's really not behavior modification, but behavior restriction. So there's only a limited amount of screen space. There are only a limited number of seconds with which you can look at any device you have, your phone or tablet or whatever. And so if Google or Facebook can say, okay, here you see this option, that is not just a question of influence. It's not just a question of suggestion. It's not just a question of making something available to you you wouldn't have known about. It's actually restricting your options within a very narrow scope. So it's a very important distinction.
Because you once said that Google was not, you were kind of hesitant in calling Google an advertising company.
Yeah, Google is not an advertising company, because what they make 95% of their money, essentially everything, not from advertising that has any sense of style or any sense of persuasion. It's simply from micromanaging the limited number of options in front of you. Mm-hmm. So it's more a behavioral option management company.
Brian D'Alessandro is a data scientist with Distillery, a large online marketing agency in New York. He analyzes the behavior you give away via your cell phone and computer.
Every single thing you do now with mobile phones, there's every location that you visit physically can be recorded. And on the web, like I said, every website that you visit can be recorded. So these atomic little actions that you take are, in essence, what big data is today. It's every little thing you do. This person is going into Starbucks, so they like their high-end coffees, and this person is going to McDonald's, so they like their fast food. These stores are right next to each other, but the person chooses one or the other. Yeah. That already tells me a lot about that person. Maybe what kind of budget they have, whether or not they're health conscious, things like that. Now, if you can follow that person through the whole day, then I have a lot more richer history. And with more people with rich histories, then I could really start finding really interesting patterns and actually use them at a certain scale. Yeah. Ultimately, what I'm after is understanding human behavior, human interactions. Big data is about behavior, because an individual only has so many data points that describe who they are as a person. How many demographics does a person really need to get a good sense of them? But your behavior trails, I won't call them infinite, but they're very long. Our firm is collecting data off of people's personal computers as well as tablets and mobile devices. So when we collect information about an individual, we're not really interested in who the person is. So I don't need to know their name, where they live isn't so important. What's more important is that this person is potentially looking to buy a new car, or they're looking to buy a particular item of clothing. And so that type of information can be inferred based on your browsing habits. Certainly, we're able to find indicators of a person's interest and purchase intent that they may be giving subconsciously. And that's really what it comes down to. It's predicting the types of products that a person might purchase, and also the, what you call in-market, whether or not someone is interested in buying something now. People often remark that I have the fewest amount of apps they've ever seen on a phone. I don't know what that says about me, but now that I know so much about how much information is collected, I keep it all private.
Is that true? Is that a joke or is that true?
That's more of a joke. I don't really care so much that my data is being collected, because ultimately I know it's people like me who use it, so I trust myself. Human beings are very random. Your purchase decisions are very random. Your browsing decisions are very random. So the more randomness or noise that's like ingrained in this process, the more difficult it is to be accurate. Okay. And there's always going to be limitations on how accurate these predictive models can be. Wall Street, for example, it's very difficult to perfectly predict if a stock is going up and down. But the way advertising works and the way Wall Street works is the transactions are happening at such scale that I only have to be 10% better than random to make millions of dollars for my firm. So if with just small gains in efficiency, you can actually create a lot of value. And that's what it comes down to. It's not about being right all the time. It's about being better than average or being better than random, and even being better than your competitors. As far as I can tell, unless we have every perfect piece of information about you and your state of mind at every given moment, we won't be able to predict you perfectly. Even you, knowing everything about your thoughts and your interests, probably can't even make perfect predictions.
Well, maybe the computer will learn to predict me better than that I can.
It's possible with enough data. It's the frontier of accuracy is yet to be determined.
Predicting your behavior based on your personal data has only just begun. But already we see examples of how the algorithms of marketing departments discover things about you that you weren't even aware of, or reluctant to make public. The New York Times published a story of a 16-year-old girl and her father, who regularly shopped at Target, an American chain store. The father was surprised to find brochures for baby products in his mailbox. He went to the store to get clarification. Calls were made, and then it turned out that Target's algorithms had predicted that the girl must be pregnant, before she had even had a chance to tell her father. But how did the Target computers know? The data analyzed by Target revealed that pregnant women tend to buy unscented shampoos and lotions because their sense of smell becomes keener during pregnancy. This way, Target can predict which of their customers is pregnant, maybe even before the customer herself knows.
The internet companies have not built a profile of you alone. They've built a behavioral model that's predictive, and that's a crucial difference. So a profile is static data. So that would be, and that they might reveal to you, that because it's harmless to reveal to you. So that would say, oh, you have this many children, and this is your income, and you have this car, and this is where you went on vacation. In a way, that's not very important. What is important is that they can correlate all of those things with everybody else. They can look at what everybody else who's similar does, and then use those statistics to predict you. And it's that prediction that they never share with you. You never get to see that. They would die before they would share that. But that's the important part. And that's when they would say, people who are similar to you are likely to accept this financial offer. People who are similar to you are likely to be influenced by this ad. People who are similar to you are likely to get this disease. And all of these things influence tremendously both the offers you receive and the options that are given to you. This idea of the open internet, the idea that it's just in order for information to be free, will let advertising be the business plan. That trade-off is terrible, because what it means is that instead of exploring options, instead of being free to walk anywhere you want in the city of the internet, there are these people who are steering you, and they're putting up blinders so you can only see certain streets, because there's a limitation to how much you can see ultimately. And so if you're micromanaging which options are available, you're essentially directing people. So the Google business plan is the greatest threat to freedom on the internet, greater than the NSA, greater than any censor, because it's directly making money from controlling what people know about.
The fast-growing amount of personal data, stored in data centers all over the world, is not only used to show you the right ad banners.
Your profile and all the information associated with it. Our data centers work and compile all that information and then send it back to you right across the open internet again. And all of that happens in milliseconds.
Personal data are increasingly used to open up surprising vistas of the future in other areas too. An American hedge fund made a nice profit buying the traffic data of millions of Americans. They found out which parking lots around stores had been particularly busy over the past 3 months and estimated which stores were making a profit and which weren't long before the quarterly figures were published. And all the data produce information that opposes some of our current expectations.
It is mostly about predictions or seeing patterns that we didn't see before. There are researchers at the University of Toronto, for example, who can foresee the likelihood of an infection of a premature baby 24 hours before symptoms set in. And they do this by a big data analysis of 1,000 data points of vital signs a second that are being captured from these premature babies. And interestingly enough, they found out that the telltale sign of a likely infection 24 hours later is not that the vital signs go haywire, as one would expect, but that the vital signs of a premature baby stabilizes. And if they stabilize, then every doctor looking at it would have thought, ah, wonderful, I can go home. This is fine now. But in reality, it was the sign, or is the sign, of a likely infection in the future. To me, this is counterintuitive, this is very powerful, and this shows that predicting the future, even if we don't know why things happen in the future, is incredibly valuable. It saves lives.
big data is mostly about people and about prediction. That's the thing that people haven't quite sort of grokked yet. It's like they think, oh, big data is about making the computers faster or something. No, it's about people. That's because people are what drive the world, people's desires, demands, etc. And so when you say, what can you predict about people? Well, people are very regular. If I watch you for a week, watch your cell phone for a week, I can predict with very high odds where you're going to be this afternoon, who you're going to be with. Your buying patterns are very, very regular.
Over the next few years, our personal data and everything that can be deduced from them will cause major changes in the way we view the world. This can be very beneficial, as long as it is for the greater good. But businesses can also use your personal data to predict your future behavior as an individual, even better than you can.
I believe that Facebook knows that you're going to split up with your girlfriend or spouse well before even you realize that, right? So just simply by observing millions of people and the patterns of behaviors, right? So Facebook can see how millions of people behave, and then they of course know when someone splits up, right? Because it all happens publicly on Facebook very often. And what they can do, they can go back and observe what patterns of behaviors, how behavior was changing across the time. So they can, and they can look very deep, right? So they know what you do on Facebook, they know whose profiles you're looking at, they know how often you message your spouse or girlfriend, then they know whether your girlfriend is looking at you or not on Facebook, right? So they know whether there are some other girls or some other guys looking at your profile in the meantime. So basically by observing your behavior, but also behavior of the people around you, they can try to figure out little patterns that might be indicating that maybe in a month, 2 or 3, you're actually going to split up, got engaged, or get a depression, right? So any event in your life, or any of your traits, like your sexual orientation, your gender, your race, or the fact that your parents were divorced in the past, it will affect your behavior. And then the thing is that it affects your behavior in a tiny, unperceptible ways. Computers have a huge advantage over human beings. While being kind of a bit silly, mechanical devices, they have ability to perceive very minute changes in behaviors. They can pick up patterns that are completely beyond the cognition of human beings. And this is how computers are basically looking at very minute differences in patterns of what you like on Facebook, what you do on Facebook. They can figure out whether you are gay or not, or whether your parents were divorced or not.
You can look at social networks, and you can predict the GDP of the city where the social network is. You can look at companies, and you can look at the social networks, and you can predict the profitability of the company quite accurately. And if you change the social networks, you can change the profitability. So you can actually make cities better, you can make companies better, through using this data about predicting how people interact.
People's future behavior is highly predictable. One man who experienced this personally is Stephen Wolfram, a famous mathematician and the inventor of the mathematical search engine Wolfram Alpha. He has been gathering data about himself for decades, and he analyzes them in great detail. He discovered that his analysis can accurately assess his future relations with his colleagues.
One of the shocking things I discovered is that if I look at email that I've exchanged with people, particularly people I work with at my company and things like that, if I see a decrease in the amount of mail I'm sending to somebody, that's about a 6-month leading indicator of problems. So so the real question is, do I set up a predictive system that gives me a little warning? And I haven't done that yet, and I'm not sure whether it's always a difficult thing to know how much you should sort of, how much predictions become self-fulfilling and so on. You can kind of see this is sort of the daily distribution of my life, when emails come in, when emails go out, when I type keystrokes, when I have meetings, when I do calls, when I take steps, walking and so on. Lots of people wrote to me and said, how can we do this for ourselves? And the answer is because they've been using things like Facebook, there is a lot of data that they've effectively been storing on themselves. And so we've built some tools to let people go and interrogate their Facebook data and try and make sort of personal analytics conclusions about themselves from that data. Sort of like a 100-page book about you, so to speak. Well, that's actually one of my kids, my older daughter's social network. It's interesting to sort of see the story of somebody's life as drawn, and this was the thing they did, this was another thing they did, and you can see that in the clustering of their friends. One of the things that came from the study we did on sort of broad study of Facebook analytics is people follow awfully standardized tracks, surprisingly so. It's now, on any individual basis, there are all kinds of fluctuations. But, when you look at these overall plots, to me, it's quite striking to what extent they look like they're just physics or something. It looks like it's just, people are reacting, relating to each other, getting into relationships a little bit like, chemical molecules would interact and bind and these sorts of things. The curves look very much like that kind of thing. And it feels very much like, at least in the aggregate, it's very predictable.
As we begin to have a really computational science of human behavior, then we can begin to design societies better, we can interpret the data better, and so on and so forth. And that's a little scary to some people, the idea that there can be a real science of people. But that's how you build better cities, help stop wars. I think we need that stuff.
Big data, with all its problem-solving capabilities, cannot function without the constant flow of your personal data. It can make businesses a healthy profit, but having all this data also provides power to who controls it.
In today's world, the most common form of power is having spy data about somebody else. And it's a very strange form of power. It's different than earlier historical forms of power. Power has usually meant the threat of violence. What would happen is somebody would say, well, ultimately, if you don't do this, I'll hurt you. And it might be indirect, it might be complex, but that's how it works. The new kind of power is different. It's a very gradual form of power. Somebody saying, hey, you can do what you want, but I'm micromanaging options, so very gradually I'm steering you to what I want. I'm very gradually influencing the financial decisions you make, the commercial decisions you make, the education decisions you make, all kinds of things. So very gradually I'm changing the world so I become richer and richer and more powerful. So it's a new kind of power that's very sneaky and gradual. But the thing about gradual power is it compounds like compound interest. So if somebody can use spy data about you to just change your decisions to give me like 0.1% advantage every year, it accumulates until suddenly I'm very rich and you're very poor. So that's the new kind of power. So it's very subtle, and that's what makes it so important that we understand it and so important that we change it.
Over a decade ago, the science fiction movie Minority Report presented the idea that crime would be predictable in the future. Criminals would be arrested before they even committed a crime. Experiments with predicting crime are now being conducted in Santa Cruz, California. A company called PredPol has young mathematicians who help the police predict which places stand a good chance of becoming a crime scene the next day.
Let's take a look, see where we want to go.
Code 4 1341, break Santa Cruz, all units, fire medical.
We have an algorithm that we're using that will identify a sort of risk factor for each area, and it will tell you, for today, these few areas are going to be high risk. And we can use that to say, if you go to these areas, maybe you'll prevent crime there. You probably won't catch anyone there, because if you're sitting there, no one's going to commit a crime in front of you. But we can use those and put them into an equation we have that will identify the risk factor and how many crimes we expect to occur there.
Watch this guy, see what he's all about here. What are you watching, buddy? Yeah, you got a guy to your right here.
Officers in the field, they will look at this and say, well, why would this program know better than me? Why would I go follow what this algorithm or this equation says and just go sit on this corner? Because I know this city better than this computer knows this city, so I shouldn't listen to it. But we found over time, as we can show that we are actually effectively predicting dangerous areas, that they will say, okay, maybe there's some merit to this, and they'll go and follow up on the areas we identify.
So now we're coming into one of our predictive policing zones. It was vulnerable for burglaries, vehicle burglaries, and auto theft.
So you finally proved that you and the computer algorithms might know the streets better than they in some way.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't necessarily come out and cruise through this neighborhood today. You know, I would go out and I'd go hit Ocean Street, I'd hit Soquel, all the thoroughfares, the main traveled portions of the road. I mean, that's where my habits would take me. They wouldn't necessarily take me through the back roads of this neighborhood. We started in July of 2011, and so we then compared previous years of doing nothing versus our first full year of doing PredPol, and we saw significant reductions in our target crimes. And I think really, I think our community expects that we're using the latest techniques available. You know, you have such great shows like CSI that are showing us how, you know, they give the illusion that the police department can solve major crimes in 45 minutes plus commercial breaks, right? I heard the comparison to Minority Report a bunch, and gosh, we wish it was that good. But it's not about profiling individuals, and that's one thing I think is very important about this. Is it's about areas. It's not about individuals. It doesn't tell you about who to stop, who to contact. It just gives you a location where it thinks you have the best opportunity to mitigate crime, and I think that that's an important distinction too. You know, rightfully, you shouldn't, and we shouldn't be profiling individuals. There's certain clues and certain hints and body language things that they'll give you. I would say oftentimes if people are up to no good, they give it away. Oh yeah, there's different body language things, there's different telltale signs about what they're doing, whether or not they'll make eye contact with you. There's a lot of little subtle hints that you watch for, and most people know it when they see it. You see somebody and they're acting suspicious, you know, oh, that guy doesn't look right. And they don't take the time to really break it down and say, okay, what are those things I'm observing that makes that person or this situation suspicious? You know, we all have it. We all have that intuition. As police officers, we learn to kind of break those things down and articulate them, because we'll use that later when we formulate our reports, and the courts and the attorneys will ask us, why did you stop this person? Well, I need to be able to tell them more than they just look suspicious. I need to be able to break that down into some definable things. It's a sleepy morning this morning. That's the way we like it. From a police standpoint, that's perfect, right? That's what you want. In fact, oftentimes when I talk to the business owners, I tell them, you know, we want you to be busy. If I'm busy, that's not necessarily a good thing for the city. So, in reality, you really want your police department to be bored.
Is it because of the predictive policing that it's quieter now here for you?
Well, we like to hope so. You know, we've experienced some significant reductions in a lot of our target crime areas. And actually, a slower day like this gives us more of that proactive time and be seen by the neighborhood and deal with maybe some of the smaller issues before they become larger issues. going on, fellas? How are you? Do you really think that the neighborhood wants to hear the music? It's a question you can answer.
What we're trying to do actually is not increase arrests, but increase police presence in high-risk areas. What we hope to see is a police car at a high-risk area stops a crime from occurring, and a potential burglar walks by, sees the car there, and says, well, I'm not going to break into this house now because there's a police car right in front of it. We're not trying to predict the people, we're trying to predict the locations and get the police cars there before the event, and then nothing happens. So no arrests come of it, no interesting anything comes of it, but ideally no crime occurs there as well.
Less crime, better healthcare, and cities built according to better designs. But will our data be used for less positive purposes too?
Most people are not aware of what's going on, so there's no reason to be worried. But also the fact is not that much really bad is happening at this point, okay? But that isn't likely to be the true case in the future unless we do something about it now. And the thing to do about it is to treat it like money, so that it has permissions and it's regulated, its flow. It's not rocket science, right? It's really just recognizing that this is an important asset and it needs to be shared so we can get the public goods, and it needs to be under individual control so people can feel safe. The way we do with money, the way we do with many things.
If we regard our personal data as valuable, and rules are put into place similar to the rules concerning money, it will be harder to abuse the data. But it can also help to maintain the economy as a whole.
Since the 19th century, there's been this anxiety that someday technology would get good enough that it would throw people out of work. Right? And then the answer to that has always been, well, no, it's just that there'll be new ways to make a living that are better than the old ways. So, and that's a very good answer. But the problem is, as things become highly automated and highly efficient because of digital technology, can we still make that answer work? If the cars are driving themselves, if your cameras are printed out by a 3D printer instead of manufactured in a factory, is there anybody still making a living? And the only possible answer is that you make a living from your information, because the information is what becomes valuable in a highly advanced society.
More and more people are beginning to realize that there is value in our personal data. Numerous small businesses and startups, such as Personal.com, Qui, and PrivacyFix, are working on regaining control of our personal data. Matt Hogan, a former bond trader on Wall Street, also became aware of the increasing value of personal data. He established DataCoop, a website where people can store their own personal data and put them up for sale.
The people who were winning on Wall Street were the people with the best data, the people with the best information, and people who were most fit to analyze that information and quickly make decisions. And you're seeing that played out in the advertising space right now, where companies that are operating with good data are making informed, good decisions that are leading to more sales and more conversions and whatnot. I think ultimately that ends up coming to the consumer as well, where we're going to be empowered with our data and we get to make decisions on our data. I think personal data is hugely valuable, and I think we're in the first inning of figuring out, what that value is and how much value can be derived from personal data. Up until now, you think about data, it's really been the domain of large enterprise and government and players that have a lot of capital and infrastructure. And I think the democratization of data is going to happen and is happening right now, and it should unleash a tidal wave of value.
What's interesting about this is that, so far as I can tell, I've been trying to calculate this, that value is going up. What I ask is, will it ever reach what we would call the poverty line? Will it ever be, will the average person's information be worth as much as the poverty line in a given country at some point? And I hypothesize, yeah, maybe in 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. But at the point where just your information is worth enough to bring you out of poverty, then we have an option to think about a society in a new way. And this is what I'm trying to get people to think about.
Thank you for watching. Hope you liked the video. If this video helps you, please subscribe and like the video to mean a lot to me. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video. Take care.